Hello and welcome to another week on Martin's Allotment. My name is Charlie and I am Martin's dad. Keep watching for the next exciting instalment of my life story.
Well, hello. It's me this time, and welcome, as my dad says, to another week on my allotment. The more observant of you may have noticed he was reading a script, but I thank him for what he did. Just thought it would be a bit different, and as you're listening weekly to his life story, it would be nice if you could see the man behind the story. We had a nice weekend with them. They came up the plot. We had a picnic and we thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm filming from a different angle this time because the wind is gale force out here, and I think the camera might get blown over, so I'm using the Kelly kettle to save on gas. And we're nearly there. In fact, I think we are there. So once I've got my brew in my hand, we'll talk about what I'm doing on the plot this week. That's better. Cheers. Let's put it there while it cools down a bit. Yeah, life's a bit erratic at the moment. Our weekends are full. So it's now, it's Thursday afternoon, finished work, and I've got 3 or 4 hours up here. So I thought I'd put together a quick video. And what am I doing on the plot? Well, the wall, the Hanley wall, or the pallet fence that I'm putting up along the side of my plot between my 2 plots and the golf driving range is now complete as far as pallets are concerned. I just need to put some sort of capping, a plank or a layer of wood across the top to try and level it up a bit and cap it off. So I've got a few bits of old fencing that I've got from a customer that I'm going to start that with, and we'll see how I get on with that. So that's one job, albeit it's nothing to do with fruit and veg. Which brings me to the next job I'm going to do. I'm going to empty all the tubs of my main crop Sarpo Miro potatoes. Now I know the accepted wisdom is to do it on a sunny day, a dry day, and leave them on the ground for a couple of hours just to dry off a bit. Well, that's lovely, but I haven't got the time, and if I leave them in the pots and there are any bugs in there or slugs, then I'm just going to lose the potatoes. So I've made the decision. Today's the day. They're coming out. We've already had some of the pots, and the potatoes have been great. Not big, but big enough. So they're not going to make jacket potatoes, but they're big enough to make mash and to boil and so on. So yeah, they're coming out today. That'll leave the pots empty, and then I've got some daffodil bulbs, and with some of the soil in those pots, I'm going to put some of that soil that isn't going to be used now till the spring in these flower troughs I've got that have had flowers in them through the summer, and I'm going to put some daffs in those troughs ready for the spring, because the daffodils I've had on site were down this strip of land by the golf netting. Well, of course I've covered that over now, so they're not going to come up in the spring. So I need some replacements, so I'm going to do that today if I can. I've also already this week made a start and taken down one of the bean frames that had completely French climbing beans on, and they were long gone. They were poor this year, as I've said before, so that's gone down. The wood is now stored ready for next year. I've weeded the bed. And the other job I'm hoping to do today, we'll see how time goes, is to start emptying my leaf mould, because, and I'm going to just top dress. I'm not going to do anything, I'm going to top dress with it. Because I need that leaf mould bay, because the leaves are starting to fall now as we move into, well, we're into autumn already. So those are the jobs I've got outstanding. They're not, you know, they're not pressure jobs. I do want to do the potatoes today, but other than that, how I get on with all the others, we'll see. So yeah, that's what I'm doing today. I'm away again this weekend. We're going down to my daughter's new house. She's in the RAF, as is her boyfriend, and they've just taken over a married quarter and are moving in together, or they have done. And I've been tasked with just giving the garden a tidy up. It actually looks quite good from the video I've seen, but you know, you can always improve, can't you? So I'm going to take my tools down with me, and I shall do the father thing this weekend. So I shan't be here tomorrow, so today's the last opportunity this week. Anyway, welcome along. Thanks if you've subscribed, and if you haven't, why not? Yeah, good to have you along. I've emptied half the tubs. There are 10 tubs with main crop potatoes in, and I've just emptied 5. No, 4 I think. The other one I'd emptied before. So I've emptied 4, and there's not a single, apart from a couple that were growing close to the surface and they got some green on them, so I've rejected those. There's not a single hole in a single potato. So I'm very happy with this method. That's the only way I'm going now, is pots. I'll invest in a few more pots next year, I think. And initially, you know, it's an investment of money, but those tubs will outlast me. And every potato is a winner. So it's not a big crop, but you know, for us two, you know. Bearing in mind I've still got a few at home, quite a few at home. That's half of the main crop, so I've got another half to go. We're not looking to be self-sufficient, and of course potatoes are cheap to buy, I know, but personally I'd eat mine every single time. I get an immense amount of pleasure out of growing them, harvesting them, and then, you know, either I or, you know, I don't mind preparing these, or Cheryl, and then we eat them. It's blooming lovely. So yeah, very happy with that. Right now, apart from the fact that it's just started raining, which was desperately needed and very welcome, I'm going to crack on and do a bit on that fence, I think. This is the penultimate section of my dad's life story that I'll read. This is about helping his dad on his baker's round. And then the next one I'll read is about when they used to go on their 1 week's holiday a year, hop picking, which was, I think it's unique to Kent. I'm not sure, maybe somebody else could tell me. But I remember as a kid seeing the hop fields. I'm not sure there are any anymore, or there's certainly few and far between. But once upon a time, Kent was strewn with hop fields. Anyway, back to my dad helping his dad with his baker's round. I had accompanied Dad from time to time on his baker's round during school holidays, but was probably not much help to begin with. As I approached my teens, I became more useful, particularly on Fridays and Saturdays when the weekly bills were paid. It probably sounds a bit wimpish, but the truth is I found paydays stressful. A lot of the bread and cake lines were priced to halfpennies or quarter pennies, which were farthings, and there was nothing decimal about the currency, 12 pennies to the shilling, for example. Dad would say, "She's had 9 shillings, 7 pence, farthing so far." As the lady took items from my basket, which I had to remember their prices, I mentally had to add these on. My brain would be on fire. All the while, they would natter to themselves or me. It could be raining, gale blowing, kids causing havoc in the passage, mad dogs. Well, you get the idea. When I think on it now, how much easier it would have made things if I had had a wee notebook to write the customer's bill so far, instead of having to carry that in my head to start with. Oh well, mostly I did okay. God knows how much his dad lost in takings. Or he might have made a bit. I doubt it. Housewives back then were shrewd. But the good news was I did very well for tips, and even started buying post office saving stamps from time to time. You stuck these stamps, I think they had started at 2 shillings and 6pence, generally called half crowns, in a blue folder provided, and when you wanted to cash them in, the interest was calculated and added to the value of the full folder, and paid in cash over the counter. That was generally how the lowly paid started up the savings ladder. Another attraction of the baker's round for me was being with horses. Dad's father had worked with horses when Dad was young, and Dad had grown up loving horses and in tune with their ways. When he first started at F. Bourne and Sons, Mr. Bourne recognised Dad's empathy with horses. So when he came back from Ireland with a young, barely broken, huge, as in tall, horse called Ginger, he asked Dad to take him on. Ginger's problem was all the strange human noises in the streets of Medway, in particular steam trains. Dad's round kept him in the vicinity of a level crossing and a rail bridge. In the beginning, Dad was not always able to stop Ginger bolting when a steam train was about. One time, Ginger had jumped into a front garden with the cart still attached, but out on the pavement. That took some sorting out. By the time I started going on the round, Dad's horse was a gentle little mare called Bonnie. She had a long blonde moustache which hung either side in 2 ringlets. Because both of the rounds Dad were in Upper Gillingham, every day leaving the bakery fully loaded, we had to go up Chatham Hill. I remember Chatham Hill, it's a monster. It was long and with a short, even steeper part halfway. Whatever the weather, we always got off at the start of the hill and walked beside the van. At the steep bit, we each got on the spokes of a back wheel, about 5 foot in diameter, and lent our weight to the struggle. I have no recollection of any other horse and cart being helped thus. Actually, going back down Chatham Hill, though empty, could be a drama. Without fail, we always stopped at the top of the hill and put the metal skid pan under one back wheel. Thus we went down the hill, sparks flying. On one icy day, Bonnie was losing the battle of holding the van back. Dad thrust the reins in my hands, yelling, "Keep her head up," then turned his back on the horse, grabbed the brake handle and pulled on it as hard as he could, holding it there till we levelled off. Whew! Normally, getting the reins was the highlight of the day, for when, in a couple of roads where customers were a fair way apart, Dad let me do the driving. So he's a young boy, 11 or 12, maybe in his teenage years, and he's got the horse and cart going down the street, and they're going down a hill with skid pans under the wheels. You see what I mean about children of today being completely isolated from anything in the slightest bit risky? In fact, that's all you hear about from the government and the public, is keeping children safe, when actually the best way to make young adults is to show them how to mitigate risk and deal with it. It doesn't mean you have to expose them to genuine danger, although I would suggest going up and down Chatham Hill with a horse and cart had a genuine element of danger about it. But that, we've lost a healthy attitude towards risk and safety, and I think we're the poorer for it. I think a life without risk is not a life. If you can honestly say your life is completely safe, well, as far as I'm concerned, with respect, you're not living life. Then there was the Hur Incident. I was serving a customer. She'd gone back indoors for something. I had one hand in the door frame when the wind slammed the door shut, flattening one finger end. It was the hinge side. My scream had Dad across the road like an Olympiad. Once I was released and Dad saw the state of my finger, he rushed me on to the cart and off we went to the nearest doctor. Momentarily my mind left the finger and enjoyed the thrill of Bonnie cantering in the shafts. Due to the load, she couldn't quite make the gallop. Meanwhile, there was a rather last paragraph now. Meanwhile, there was a rather bad-tempered horse called Peter. Other roundsmen, more or less, refused to use him, so Dad ended up with him. Peter had a particular dislike of children. I know how he feels. So whereas I had started to put the bridle and collar on Bonnie while Dad loaded up the van, I kept out of Peter's way. Eventually, while with Dad, he picked up a young child by the shoulder, pushchair and all, as high as he could stretch, then dropped it. Wow. Nowadays there'd be legal case. Oh, you don't even want to think about it. Peter was forever after in a muzzle. Mr. Bourne prudently moved him to another round. Was I safe now? Oh no. One morning, wheeling Dad's shop bike over to the stables, there's Peter standing in the yard by the tack room, waiting for the harness. Muzzle not yet fitted. He wasn't the only horse standing there, so I could see I would have to pass close. Fear welled up, but pride won. I kept going. So did Peter. As I passed, he grabbed me by the shoulder, picked me up, still hanging on to the bike, as high as he could, and dropped me. The truth is, whenever I uncovered my shoulder, there were no marks, but Peter got a thrashing with the chain end of a trace. Wouldn't be allowed to do that today either. But anyway, that's a little piece of history, and a young teenage boy's experience of it. Absolutely wonderful. I hope you find it mildly interesting. Well, it does now go the full length of my plot, and they're not the same pallets, they're all different. I've got to take what I can get, so it's not quite as pleasing to the eye as it might be, but when those tiles go there and cover up the ditch, it makes quite a difference. Really does tidy it up. Well, I've had enough wood on my plot to put a cap along the top of those pallets. It's not perfectly straight, but then it was never going to be. The ground isn't, and I'm not messing about any more than I have to. So all I need now is some green stain, and that'll blend in nicely, I think, and a few more slates to just cover up the ditch. Happy with that. Well, as the kettle boils for my second brew, I'm sitting pretty here, in a manner of speaking. I've done the potatoes, and I've now just capped off the fence. And the last job I've got to do, I don't know what the time is. My watch has stopped working. That's irritating, isn't it, when you don't know what the time is. And of course I don't carry a phone, so can't use that. So I've no idea what the time is, but I'm now going to go down and look at the leaf mould. But before I do, I hope you'll excuse me having a little bit of a rant. It is my channel after all, and I haven't mentioned this current situation for months, I don't think. And when this first started back in March, April, I just made a very brief comment that I thought we'd lost all sense of proportion and perspective, and that this, and my overriding thought then, as it has been all the way through and will continue to be, is that the cure will do far more damage than the disease. But I've noticed that we've just had this television declaration by Boris Johnson and all the other members of the cabinet. When they go on the television, they've picked a new phrase and no one's challenged them on it yet, and the phrase is that this is the greatest health crisis we have faced in 100 years. Really, the greatest health crisis, and nobody's picking up on it and no one's challenging them on it, as far as I know. Bearing in mind I don't watch a lot of main television anymore, I'm sick of it. But that's a hell of a claim. When you think that in 1900 the chance of you getting cancer, or anyone in Britain getting cancer, was 1 in 33 in 1900. Today, for men it's 1 in 2, for women it's 1 in 3. Just think about how widespread cancer has become. And it kills about 500 people a day. A day. It killed 500 people a day before this COVID came along, and it'll kill 500 or more long after COVID isn't even mentioned. That's cancer. Heart disease. Heart disease is growing at such a rate, it's hard to keep up with it. It kills 460 people on average a day in Britain. Almost completely avoidable, and certainly reversible. So that's not our greatest health challenge. What about autism? In 1973, the country did a nationwide survey and found that 1 in 50,000 children had autism. Today, depending on what part of the country you go to, it's between 1 in 36 and 1 in 50. So in my lifetime, autism has gone from 1 in 50,000 to 1 in about, let's say the best case scenario, 1 in 50. Autism is rising at such an epidemic rate that many scientists predict, bearing in mind you've got to be careful with scientists predicting anything, that by 2050 every child born in the UK will be somewhere on the autism spectrum. So that's not our greatest health challenge. What about dementia? Dementia is at epidemic proportions, and yet by 2030 is set to double. But COVID is our greatest health crisis ever. I don't know what planet these men live on, but they don't live on the same planet as me. Anyway, I know you're sick of hearing about it, and so am I, but I despair when these idiots say something so glib as that, and journalists and the opposition let them get away with it. So, one last thing. The government figures show that since this COVID crisis, so-called, started back in March, and this is government figures, and you can check them, just over 300 people in the UK who were otherwise healthy have died having tested positive for COVID. This, the greatest health crisis in 100 years, so far has killed just over 300 healthy people. That's that's not even 3/4 of the people who die of heart disease in a day. I find it staggering. So let's look at last week's figures. Last week, 8,996 people died in the UK in a week. Of that, nearly 9,000 people, 83 died having had a positive COVID test in the last 28 days. So that doesn't mean 83 people died of COVID. It just means they had tested positive. Out of 9,000 last week. You are currently 6 times, statistically speaking, 6 times more likely to die of flu than you are of COVID. Anyway, please, I wish the British public would wake up to the lies we're being fed. I'm not saying that there's not a problem. Clearly, COVID is killing people on a weekly basis, but the numbers are so minuscule, and there are so many other completely curable problems, or certainly others that aren't curable, that we should be putting more effort into. Anyway, rant over. I promise I won't mention it again for a certain amount of time. I've got that rant off my chest. I feel better for that. And it reminded me that I came up here earlier in the week, I think, and I had a present hanging on my door. How appropriate. I'm not going to put it on. Betty, the lady who gave me the tea bags back, well, over a year ago now, last summer, Betty has made, by her own fair hands, knowing I'm an ex-soldier, my own designer face mask. Maybe some people think after that I should be muzzled. So, that's incredibly kind, Betty. You are such a lovely person, and you're far too good to me. And your strawberries are still sat here on the toilet, by the way. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, words fail. But you are so kind. Not sure when I'll wear this. I haven't worn one yet. I'm going to have to now. I mean, we're going out to see my daughter this weekend, and I think she's booking a table for us for Sunday dinner. And now you've got to wear a muzzle inside the restaurant unless you're sat on your bum. Not quite sure how that works, but yeah, so I'm going to have to wear one on Sunday, so I shall take this with me. So thank you very much. On the allotment front, I'm pleased to report my garlic has all come up. There's a couple of little gaps, but yeah, very happy with that. Let's hope it doesn't get flooded and waterlogged over the winter. It shouldn't do, the bed's been raised. So yeah, my garlic is on its way, called Marco. Look at that, fantastic stuff. Well, that's one bed done. Not sure how far my modest amount of leaf mould will go, but even if it only does another couple more, it'll have been well worth it. Over to you, worms. I haven't done any QI interesting facts for a while, so I'll do a couple of pages and see what you think. Gloucester sends a lamprey pie to the Queen for each of her jubilees, but as a protected species in the UK, the lampreys have to come from Canada. Isn't the lamprey a fish? Am I right in saying that? Canada has a strategic maple syrup reserve. Wow. Fort Blunder, built by the US in 1860 to defend itself from Canada, was accidentally built in Canada. Bear Castle is the literal translation from Swedish of Björn Borg. Mahatma Gandhi wrote in to ask about the Charles Atlas bodybuilding course. If you've ever seen photographs or footage of Mahatma Gandhi, you'll know that he never took up on the course. Krishna Pandit Banji is Sir Ben Kingsley's real name. In 2007, the Swiss army invaded Liechtenstein by accident. It was dark and they couldn't see where they were going. Oh, we don't want those, it's about music. The dirty clothes worn by astronauts on the space station, International Space Station, are jettisoned to burn up on re-entry. That's the best way to deal with all dirty washing, if you ask me. Human beings are 3% metal. I think my dad's a bit more than that. If two pieces of metal touch in space, they stick together. Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space, told her family she was going to a skydiving training camp. Her mother only found out the truth from the news. How odd. How quite interesting. Well, that's me done for the day. A very short but productive period up the allotment. So, as planned, I've capped the fence all the way down. Just need to buy some green stain now and paint it to make it blend in more naturally. I've harvested half the potatoes in the pots. Got a nice little crop there to take home. And I've emptied about 3/4 of the leaf mould bay, and it's done 3 beds. Interestingly, it's not quite as crumbly and as rotted down as I thought it would be in the bottom. This time last year when I filled it, as it you know, every week I'd fill it and it would drop a bit, and then for the following week I'd put more in, and I kept doing that till the lid was way up off the pile, and eventually it settled down and it was down to about a third of the full of the bay. So it well rotted down, but I haven't touched it all year. And I'm thinking perhaps a couple of times a year I should get that lid off and get a fork in there and really turn it around. I don't know. Does anyone got any experience of that? Is it better for making it a bit more of a crumbly substance if I move it about and agitate it a couple of times a year? I don't know. Anyway, it's not a massive problem. The stuff is still beautifully rich, and you know, we'll see the worms do their job and pull it down into the soil over the winter. So very happy with what I've done. I'm taking home some potatoes and some courgettes, and I shall be back up next week. I apologise for my rant. Haven't had one for a while. If you're a new subscriber, very early on when I started these videos, I would intersperse the allotment stuff with a little bit on health. I just figured that, you know, there's hundreds of people doing allotment videos and they can become a bit samey, if that's a word. So I just thought I'd put in a little bit on health just to promote a bit of thinking. Some people enjoy it, and I've lost subscribers where they clearly don't, but it's my channel, and I put on there the content I think is appropriate and interesting, and I hope you find that the case. Some do, some don't, you know, and that's life, isn't it? But I've stopped doing a bit of the health stuff recently simply because of this coronavirus thing, where, you know, I'm sure, I know my wife's fed up with me talking about it. I'm just so angry. I'm fuming that the government have taken away my liberty and the people gave it up so easily. And they, you know, the majority of my customers who are, you know, the older generation, they tend to be, not only do they support the government in what they're doing, they want them to go further. I mean, once you've given up freedoms, you don't get them back. But anyway, I mean, just one aside, I'll give you an idea of how I believe we're being lied to. One example, they've stopped talking about deaths now. In the beginning it was 400 died today, 600 died today, and that many people, it has an impact. And of course they want to scare people into adopting new behaviours. So early on the scare tactic was the deaths. Now the deaths are bumping along the bottom. You know, one day it's 10, one day it was 4, I think yesterday it was 30. Now that no longer has impact because the deaths are so low, they're now using cases. How many cases today? It was 4,000 new cases today, 6,000 new cases today. That, medically speaking, is a lie. They are not cases. Those people are being tested because they don't know if they've got it or not. And if someone doesn't have symptoms, they are not a case. So that is not 6,000 cases a day, it is 6,000 positive tests. And even that is in doubt because the test has such a high false positive rate. But no journalist picks them up on it. Nobody says, are they actually cases? The people are ill? Oh, no, they're not ill. Well, then they're not cases. Anyway, that's just one example of the lies we're being fed, and it just washes over people. I don't, you know, I'm no expert, but I know they're not cases. And I know there are things far more serious. Most of the people watching this, and including me, will die of all the common illnesses that you find in the Western world. You know, that's what we should be concentrating on, not this COVID stuff. Anyway, is that a second rant? I'm not sure. Thank you for watching. Thanks for coming along on my video, and well done if you made it to the end. If I haven't made your ears bleed with my rant, then please give me a thumbs up. And all being well, you and I will get together again next week. Have a lovely weekend, whatever you're doing. I hope you enjoy it. And I will see you next week at some point. Take care. Bye for now.